Steve, I tried to get a hold of Rick Hyatt, emailed him, texted him, didn't hear from him. So we're going to go forward.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know what time they was going back. They went to Keith Hoskins' funeral today.
And then also Jake Rendelman should be jumping on here pretty quickly. Tim, thank you for joining us tonight. Really appreciate the short notice. And for the sake of getting things going, we'll just have the three people in the room introduce themselves, so you know who you're talking to, and we'll go from there. Rick, you're first.
Oh, good. I'm Rick Story. I'm Beta Alpha AGR 200. Live in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. I'm in charge of the communications of the alumni, and been kind of active again since 2017.
I'm Steve Wyatt. I live in Effingham, Illinois. I'm past, not the immediate past president, but the one before that of the Alumni Association. My PIN number is 57, and I was installed an overruler when I got our charter back in 1970 for Beta Alpha chapter. And I'm retired from USDA.
Sounds good. I'm Tom Meyer, president of the Alumni Association. PIN number about 229, activated in 1977. So that shows my age. Basically just appreciate you being on board tonight to kind of talk through our guys just a little bit. So as we begin the process of looking at financing a house. And Tim, let's hear about yourself.
So I'm Tim Raver. I'm with Alpha Theta's chapter, which is at Maryland. So this is an AGR. You guys are alumni of an AGR chapter?
That's correct.
Okay, that wasn't clear. Very good, very good, very good. So that helps me out, helps me understand who I'm talking to, and just instead of just some yokels, right?
Yeah, the Beta Alpha chapter down at SIU.
SIU is Southern Illinois.
Yes, correct.
Like that, huh? You see?
Perfect.
Well, I was the treasurer of the Alumni Association for our recent and ongoing chapter house renovation. I don't know where you want me to start, but I can wrap it up when we get around to Pennington. Our chapter house was built in 1932. Okay, and so around 2012, we figured that we got tired of repairing it and wanted to try to do the major. And that's exactly what we did. But of course, we didn't have any money. So we interviewed a bunch of fundraising companies. And Pennington was the only one that didn't want a piece of the action. They just wanted to charge us by the service. In other words, here's our bill, you pay it. Whatever you collect, you keep. You just pay our bill, that caused a little bit of discussion. But that's what we decided to do because of Aaron Parker. And let me just tell you that Aaron Parker, I can't speak more highly of him because that guy is the real deal. I told him that if he ever went for another job anywhere in America for as long as I'm alive, please put me on his reference list because that's how high I think of that guy. And the fact that he's been there at Pennington for the last 10 years just speaks that they probably think he's the same thing. He must be a real big, he must be a rainmaker for those guys. So anyway, the key ingredient to starting a fundraising on our chapter house was that we already had a 5013C. Do you guys have one of those?
We do not.
That's your first point. That's the first place you got to start. Okay, you have to get yourself a 5013C, which makes all deductions tax deductible. Whereas if they just donate to a 501A or something like that, which is what the chapter house organization probably is, okay, it's not tax deductible. So you got to get that 5013C. And it's through that you're able to attract the big ticket guys that you really need to attract to make any type of thing successful. our goal was to raise $800,000, which in Aaron Parker's world was small potatoes. He looked at us, said, well, Pennington came back after their evaluation and said, we think you'll be able to raise $500,000. We just went through $1.3 million. So we're still raising money on the efforts of Pennington. It all depends, of course, on your alumni base, but you got to have those tools in place to allow the big hitters access to some tax deductibility. Okay. You got to have some big hitters. Our alumni base in Maryland is not as large as it should be. Maryland is not an agricultural state. And in fact, since I was at AGR in the 70s, I think that in the 70s, Maryland was a big dairy producer. I think since the 70s, Maryland has lost 80% of its family dairy farms. Okay, just from urban sprawl. So we were dealing with about 600 active alumni. The one big hitter dairy farm that was still left stepped into the game and really came through for us in a big way, and basically underwrote 25% of our budget, which was in excess of $200,000. And but he wouldn't have done it unless he got that 501(c)(3). So that's the first thing you got to do. Okay, trust me on this, because even the guys that want to give you $500, they want that tax deduction thing coming to them so they can take it off their taxes, even though the standard deduction really makes it tough to do to get to that point anymore for the smaller guys. But for the big guys, they're going to want to take that tax deduction. Okay. And other than that, Pennington, they took us by the hand and came into town, identified who the big hitters potentially could be, and organized the Alumni Association in a manner that allowed us to go out and directly call on them. Okay, in other words, they broke it down. They basically they probably found like 20 or 30 really, really good Alpha Theta alumni who would be motivated to do that. And quite frankly, most of those were past Nova rulers. Okay, these are the guys that already had their emotions into the fraternity, or they wouldn't have been presidents, right? And so, and they went and spread out into their peer group of when they were there, and literally reached out and touched everybody. And after that was done, then they identified who the big hitters, and then people know the people that have been successful in life, or people that have inherited lots of money, or people that are generous in nature, and people that want to get into the flow of the whole operation. The people that had a good college career and had a memorable college career. People who found their wives in college. People who found their wives at the fraternity house. They're the people that are stepping up to not even give donations, but to give donations over and over and over again. Now, what Pennington does is organize it into a 5-year type of deal. Okay, so in other words, you want to pledge $10,000, you can donate $2,000 a year. And what they do is they send out the reminders to everybody every year. Your payment number 3 is due, payment number 4 is due. And they're very, very good at it. They're really good at cashing the checks. Actually, the checks came to us, and but they're really good. And they send out the receipts. Everything's right on time. Pennington's back room is excellent, 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 excellent. We're still using them because we didn't raise enough money to finish our kitchen, so we're still trying to get $300,000 more. And of course, we're trying to get it when the stock market is going down, so it's getting a little tougher. But we're often using those guys again to raise more money, just not as directly and as costly as we did the first time out. Because again, now we've identified who's going to give us money, and they're the people that have already given us money. And so what we do is you go back to the well, and you get back to the well. And if you're on a 5-year program where you're paying every 5 years, the last thing we just sent out to everybody was, how about making a 6-year payment for us? Okay, you haven't made a payment in a couple of years now. How about making a payment for the 6th year that you pledged before? And that's working out for us, okay. But again, these are all things that Pennington brought to us. These are the ideas that we certainly did not have. And they're very good. They're very good. But like I say, it's been a 10-year deal for us now. We actually got to the point where we could go to the bank and because we've crossed the threshold for the bank, and the bank was willing to step into the rest of what we needed. And then we got ready to go, and then COVID hit. Because we were what are we going to do with the boys while this house gets torn down, which is basically we gutted the house, and so we were going to put them out and we were going to rent them someplace somewhere, just keep them together as much as we can. And then COVID hit, and the whole university basically closed down. So we did the fraternity house during COVID, which really was beneficial to us. And again, we got everything done except for the kitchen. An 80-year-old house, you wouldn't know that the guys wouldn't know where their old rooms were if they came back now, because the floor plans have been totally redone, and we didn't have air conditioning in that 80-year-old house, so we had to go put that in, and it ended up with the program. We got the $800,000, and we had a $500,000 from the bank, so we were at $1.3 million, and we spent every nickel of it, and we're looking to spend another $300,000 or $400,000 still. So yeah, that's where we stand. Our chapter house holds 32 brothers.
Okay. Do you have a house mother there?
We are the luckiest chapter in the history of chapters. We have a former Alpha Gamma Rho National Traveling Secretary as our house father. Okay, this guy's from Missouri. I don't know if he's crossed your path. His name is Logan Yearsley. I don't know if that name has crossed your path or anything.
I don't call that name.
Let me think, he's probably about 35, maybe 40. And he's from Missouri, and he was traveling and wanted to get out to the Washington, D.C. area. College Park, Maryland is a suburb of Washington, D.C. He wanted to get out to the Washington, D.C. area because he wanted to get into the federal government, which he ended up. He's at the Farm Bureau now. And so that's where he is, but he still lives in the fraternity house. And he's had all the risk management stuff, and he knows how to solve problems. And he's, like I say, it's really been a godsend. And he just told us, like, in the last 6 or 8 months, and he's looking at rolling out, which has been one of the great fears that we have, because he was like an on-site construction supervisor the whole time this was going on, and plus he keeps an eye on the guys. I mean, the guys are good. We have good guys, like most AGRs are, but he keeps an eye on things. We've had some close calls, but he's on social stuff, but he's been there to diffuse type stuff. So yeah, we have one. Now, when I was there, we didn't have one. We didn't have one when I was there. So we didn't need one. We were much more mature then, right?
Absolutely. Keep it up. So another question that I have is, did you, as an alumni group, face some severe questioning on going with the Pennington model versus the other ones? And if so, what are some of the other models that people use to raise funds?
I don't really know the answer to that question. It's been a long time now.
Okay.
And those meetings, the meetings kind of come and go. We interviewed 3 companies, Pennington being one of them, and none of them were referred to us. It's all through general solicitation. They would just kind of chase through the internet and reached out to people and say, yeah, this is what we do. And 2 of them were percentage driven. In other words, if they're going to raise $800,000 for you, they want their percentage. Okay, period. And Pennington wanted just a contract amount, like a pay for play type deal. And it was reasonable. It was a reasonable amount. It didn't seem to be outlandish. I don't know what they're charging nowadays, but we were able to handle that cash flow. And I assure you that if you went down the entire list of the alumni board at that time and they asked them if it was worth it, if Pennington was worth the dollars that we paid to him, because that's one of the things that comes up as a hurdle when you're out recruiting dollars. Okay, I can recall several people I talked to says, I don't want to pay for a fundraiser. I don't want my money going to a fundraiser. I want my money going to the fraternity house. And that's an argument that you have to overcome. And the way to overcome that argument is that we can't get to everybody without them. And we're getting more back from them as a result of this. And they spread the net so much better. I really like Pennington. I really do. I guess that's why he gave you my name. He knew I'd speak well.
Yes,
Could you-
he sure did. We've been talking about your plan almost since the first time we started chatting, and I thought that it was wise to bring other members of the alumni board into this discussion today. So I'd like to open the floor to Rick, Steve, and Rick Hyatt for your questions, feedback, whatever of Tim.
I just got a question. What can you be a little more definitive on the type of model that they used as far as Pennington? You talked about organizing into groups, and can you give me a little more detail on that?
Now it's been 10 years since we did this, and so if I don't remember some of this stuff, please forgive me. But basically, what Aaron did first was he came in to the alumni board, and we talked about identifying key players in the alumni base. In other words, he started small. Okay, he started with the 10 or 20 people that were in tight on the alumni board that were committed to this program. Okay, and spent some time with us, and we knew who. Well, we didn't know who they all were, but we knew that there were some successful people out there that they should be called on. And he said, well, we don't want to make them do a lot of grunt work. We just want them to be our targets, okay, eventually. And so we went to the next level of guys, like the guys who were veterinarians and things like that still had a lot of power within the alumni association. So we got those guys in the next meeting. And that next meeting was held in a conference room where I worked. So we had about 40 people at that one, okay? And at that meeting, those guys were each given a list of names. These are the guys that you're going to call on. And basically, here's the script of what you're going to say. Okay. And that's what they did. And it was their job. So we're 2 levels down now. So it's their job to reach out and identify who wants to participate, who doesn't want to participate. And then Aaron himself came back in to call on the top 20 potential donors. Okay. And he went in and met with who we targeted as the big hitters. And we did some introductions, say, hey, listen, Joe, we want you to meet with Aaron, okay? And we didn't even go with him. He went by himself and met these guys, and he's very, very good. And the ones he couldn't get to because they weren't in our area anymore, he actually had other people from Pennington who were based on like the West Coast go in and call on these guys. Okay, or they're in Texas. They had people in Texas to go in and call on these guys. It's all face to face. And again, it's all based on here's the program, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Don't you remember how great it was? And I probably still had the stuff here somewhere. It's probably still got in my garage, like all the brochures, they published brochures. It was really, really good stuff. Lots of stuff to read. Okay, if you want to poke some holes in it, here you go on page 17. Here's how the money is going to be spent. On page 16, here's where the money is. Here's the expenses that we see. Here's the outlays for the fraternity house. Here's the fundraising expense that we see, and all that kind of stuff. Very, very well organized. I don't know if that helps answers your question, Steve, but
Yeah.
It's they got a process, and some of the stuff that he comes in and shows you are the successful fundraising projects that they've been on in the past. Okay. And it's pretty impressive with the money they raised. And of course, it always comes down to the viability of the alumni base that you're calling on. Right. And so they'll help you get set up. This is why you need a 501(c)(3) so you can take things other than dollars. You take things like real property or stock transactions or donations out of people's 401ks. And it gives you all that knowledge of how to take in non-fungible donations that really help. Okay, we have 3 or 4 people that are doing matching type contributions that are in corporate America where I took advantage of my wife's, as a matter of fact, and her company matched her donation to our educational foundation, dollar for dollar, up to $5,000 a year. So we took advantage of that every year. So, and they set all that up. Like I say, their back room is excellent, excellent. So,
Barney, this is Rick Hyatt. I dressed up for the meeting today. I have my shirt on and I have my AGR pin on.
well, hold on a minute.
Oh, wait a minute. Wow, they scared him away or something.
You know, if I'd have known we were dressing up, I'd have gotten dressed up earlier.
I
Yeah, that's fair.
love it.
No, I'm sorry. As the guys know, we just lost a brother, buried him down at Carbine today, and Keith Hoskins, who was our treasurer for over 30 years, and a real brother. We're a real committed brother. Marty, I guess the biggest question I've got is I've worked with.
That's actually Mary. It says Mary. That's my wife. I'm Tim.
Pardon?
It's
I'm
Tim,
That's
Keith.
my wife Mary that says it. I got her. I'm on her computer.
Okay.
It's Mary.
I've worked with, we had a 501c3 a long time ago, probably been 15 years ago. And we lost the status of that just from a lack of filing. But from what I know and what I've read and what I've picked up here, as Tom's asked me to do, a 501c3 requires the money to be used for education, philanthropic, all that kind of stuff, not for brick and mortar.
That's correct.
All right. So how do you run that kind of money through your 501c3 to do brick and mortar?
There is a law firm in Indianapolis that the National Fraternity will recommend you to. Okay, and I don't know the name of it. I bet you Aaron knows the name of it. Okay, but we utilize these guys for all of our fraternal law issues. And what they'll do is, first off, they'll get you squared away and getting your 501(c) back up and operational. Okay, and then they'll tell you how to access it. And the way that we access it is that the Educational Foundation is allowed to make donations to the chapter house to offset the educational portion of their operational costs. Does that make sense? So in other words, and they do it by square footage inside the chapter house. So and the rooms where you sleep don't count. So in other words, you got your library, you got this, you got your media room, and you make a whole bunch of different names that sound like it's for educational purposes. A percentage of the hallways, all kind of stuff, and basically we've moved in over the period of fundraising about $40,000 a year as an operational grant, which we took from the left-hand pocket and put it over to the right-hand pocket. So, and just held on to it until we needed to spend it on the chapter house. Okay. And we're still doing that every year. We move donated funds into the Educational Foundation over to the chapter house, the Alumni Association, which is a separate corporation, through an operational grant. Then they do the same thing for the construction grant. Okay. Once you get all your construction costs put together, then they figure out how much of this is going to renovate educational areas within the chapter house. That makes sense? And so then you take all the money that you have and that, in other words, in your foundation, and then you lay it over against, okay, well, here's our square footage here. We can, and he ran a, we had a guy that our backroom guy was outstanding. It wasn't me. He ran a percentage of that against the money that we had. Okay. So in other words, if we had 300,000 or if we had construction costs of $700,000, he said, okay, well, 60% of this through this formula said that goes toward the educational portion of the fraternity house. So it's 60% times 700,000, that's $420,000 we're able to move in as part of the construction grant. Okay? It's very, it's as, you know, it's all this stuff you don't want to do, but you do it because it's legal. Okay? Why can't you just spend the money?
How do you document that for a possible audit?
You do. It's pretty easily documented. Okay. Every year there's a letter that comes from the Alumni Association to the Educational Foundation requesting these dollars based on these formulas. Okay. And once you have your square footage identified, that's not going to change from year to year unless you throw a new wing up, right? Or you redo the whole inside. So if you're sitting at 40% or 50% of the chapter house being dedicated to educational purposes, then you can just keep tapping into that over and over again. And when you get to the individual rooms, now I'm remembering some of this, you're actually able to go in and segregate off the study portions of those rooms as educational, whereas the sleeping and closet areas are not. You're actually able to do that. So when we designed the rooms, we did it so that the beds and the closets were stuck back in the back in a corner somewhere, and the rest of it is where the desks went. Okay?
Hey, Tim,
Yes, sir.
that law firm you were addressing is John Christopher. And I've already had a very, very, very preliminary discussion with him. Is that the name that rings a bell for you?
It does not ring a bell with me, but that means nothing. Is he in Indianapolis?
You're close, Cincinnati.
Maybe that's what it is. I could go and pull my folders. I'm no longer the treasurer of the Alumni Association because I got out of that. I'm still the treasurer of the Educational Foundation because we split them apart to make sure that it didn't look like there was hanky-panky going on with, you know, different officers and different corporations and things like that. We actually split them apart. So I could probably find that. I probably have a folder on the attorney. If not, I can get it from our alumni board's treasurer. He would have it.
Aaron just sings the praises of John Christopher's law firm. So it all it may be a different name, it may be a different individual than 10 years ago, but
Yep.
it kind of fits the MO of what you're describing.
We could have split out and started his own. Okay.
Yeah.
Because at the time we got involved with the law firm, they were the only ones in the United States doing Greek law for fraternities and sororities. The only ones. So this guy might have figured that, you know what? There's a potential, there's a lot of fraternities and sororities out there that need lawyers, trust me. So maybe that's what he is. So if Aaron is backing him up, then I would support Aaron's statement. But that's the guy that'll help you through the 401(c), and he's also the guy that'll tell you how to get your grant operation up. Now, one of the things that the ability to continue those grants, of course, rests on the ability to fundraise. Because once you run out of money, you can't give a grant if you don't have any money. Okay, you can say, okay, well, give me another grant, but if there's no money to send over, it's too bad for the Alumni Association. So this fundraising game becomes something that you want to have that gets into place and stays in place and becomes what's the word that just keeps going and going and going like the Everready Bunny. So once you get it up and running, then you have to keep it going and get the new guys on your alumni boards to keep it going. And of course, that all comes down to communication and keeping everybody informed. That was the biggest hurdle that we had, is getting out to all the alumni who hadn't been up to speed and informed. And so that took us a couple of years just to get our addresses up to date. And,
Rick, would you talk to Tim a little bit about where you're at and what you see for our situation with addresses, and then try to compare them to what Tim might have experienced back then?
Sure. I don't have the figures in front of me right now, but we have roughly like
little town here, that'll be all right.
Like roughly 728 alumni when it boils down to it. When you take out all the ones that unsubscribed or have we don't have addresses for, or don't have email addresses for, and And so the goal that I was going to start was looking at our list, and then Tom was going to have somebody maybe try to call some of the unsubscribed and just make sure they truly did mean to unsubscribe, and then also would talk to National and try to get see if we've got any addresses that they have that we might not have correct, and look through a list, and
They'll
that's on
send
my-
you they'll send you their whole mailing list.
Yeah, I got that already. So I just got to do a comparison between Excel spreadsheets. And then Carbondale, the school, SIU, just did a, or I'm sorry, National Office. The National Office just did an AGR, just tried to update their records, and they're going to put out a new book with everybody's chapters and all the, addresses and phone numbers. So when that comes out, I purchased that. So it's supposed to be out this month. I'll also look through that and see if we can find anybody. So yeah, that's the main goal, is to make sure we've got everybody that we can possibly get a hold of.
You got to get them, and you got to get them informed. Here's what we're up to. Here's what we're up to. How big a project is this?
Tom?
No clue?
What was the question? I'm so sorry.
How big a project are we talking about?
If I had to take a wild guess at this moment, by the time we did everything we wanted to do, I'd say it'd be $1 million.
Okay, it's going to be $1.5 million by the time you get it all organized.
Yeah, no doubt.
So yeah, I mean, the architect is just hammering to begin with, and so yeah, it'll run more. That's what we discovered too. We thought we were going to get it done for $500,000, $800,000. We're at $1.3 million and still cooking, and it's just the way these things go. I think it's just the way these things go.
Got it. Does anybody else have any other questions for Tim?
What did Pennington base their fee on? The others did it by a percentage. Did they was based on hours, or just a flat fee, or what did they? How did they base their fee?
They have a schedule of rates. Okay, they got a rate schedule, and it's kind of like it's like an a la carte thing. If you want this, it's this much. If you want this, it's this much. You want to keep adding them up, they'll just keep tagging them on. Okay, I think that once we went through that, we ended up taking their base thing and then took 3 or 4 or 5 add-ons. Okay, because it all made sense. It just all made sense. And we started, I gotta tell you the truth, we started our educational foundation. We had $120,000 in the bank. Okay, so we didn't have to fundraise to pay the fundraiser, which was really important. And so we planned, so we budgeted that down, and we budgeted $70,000 or $80,000 for the fundraiser, and we had it. So let's just say it turned into nothing. We weren't killing the goose, so we still had something, and that's what we had to do. We had the cash. If we didn't have the cash, I don't think we would have done it. But in hindsight, had to be done.
How many contributors did you end up having, roughly?
Well, what Pennington does is they come in and they suggest that you break everything into levels. Okay, you got the gold level, you got the green level, you got the silver level, you got the bronze level, you got the platinum level, you got the diamond level, you got the, you know what I'm saying? You know, all kind of levels. And so what you want to do is you want to get guys that try to overshoot and try to get to the next level up. And so probably in the top 2 levels, which is where 65, 70% of the money came from, there's probably 10 people up there, the top 2 or 3 levels. Okay, 10 people. And then the rest of them filtered in $20,000 and less. Okay, with the biggest run being probably $5,000 and less. I think we had about 100 people in the game. Okay, and again, what you do, what we found is that the people that have already made a monetary contribution are much easier to approach about another one, because they've got skin in the game now. They want to see this thing through to the end, and they want to see it successful. And then of course you have everybody come back, look at the progress, look at this, come on back, you got to see this, you're not going to believe it. You got to get all the guys, clean everything up and make it spiffy. Then you have the you know, when you get it all done, you had the grand opening and the grand president comes in, you get the scissors and all kind of crap going on. It was a real show. It was a real show. So it was a good experience for me. And I'm sure that all the alumni board members that you asked would say the same thing. It really cleans out the guys who do the talking to the guys who do the work. We had a couple guys on the alumni board who do a lot of talking. They're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to do this and do that. And then we asked them to do that and they didn't do anything. We got somebody else take your place because we had a motivated base. We were probably dealing with an alumni base of about 600, 650 living alumni. Okay, at the time. The Maryland chapter has not been real successful in pumping out lots of numbers here in the last 20 years because, again, it's because the agrarian base is pretty much gone away in Maryland. But we got some good guys in there now, and now they got 40, 50 guys, 30 of which live in the fraternity house. So that's pretty good. We like that. We like that.
Tim, I'd like to have just a real quick geography lesson about Maryland. One time we drove back to the Midwest from Washington, D.C. and went the Western Maryland route, and it looked pretty darn agricultural far to the west. And I remember endless miles of agricultural. What is it that they produce in that western part of the state away from the Baltimore, D.C. sprawl?
Houses.
Wow. I bet it has changed since then.
I don't know how many years ago that was, but that was prime dairy farm out there. What you're talking about, that area up 270 and heading out through Frederick and Hagerstown and Cumberland and heading toward Ohio that way, up to Pittsburgh and west that way. That was prime dairy farm. And a lot of those dairy farmers are gone. Just a lot of them sold their developmental rights to the state. That's when the state was trying to maintain some type of agrarian presence in the state of Maryland. They saw it slipping away, and it's not something that at that time the state wanted to lose. So a bunch of people sold off their development rights, took the money and moved. Okay, and sold their land at a discount to somebody who didn't know how to farm. And eventually it ended up getting developed anyway, because that's what happens in Maryland. It's just you guys are in Illinois, you understand that state government, Democrat state government does that to people. They want something, they'll do it, and they don't care what people say. So
yeah.
You're down in Southern Illinois. I know Southern Illinois is a different state than Northern Illinois, but that's what it is. Western Maryland and those areas around Baltimore and Washington. And the Eastern Shore of Maryland, which is on the other side, which is where I am right now, is all chicken farmers. Yes, and chicken farmers and truck farmers. I mean, I was at an event a couple of weeks ago where they got in an argument with the guys on the Western Shore, which is what over there where you're talking about, and the guys on the Eastern Shore would argue about the yield on their corn crops this year, which is pretty funny to listen to because I'm not a farmer. And said, well, we got the rain. Well, we didn't. Well, the hell with you. And pretty funny to listen to because okay.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy stuff. Rick Hyatt, Steve, Rick, any other questions for Tim? Tim's been very gracious to take his time tonight to talk to us. Do you have any other questions for him?
Not right now.
For Rick and Steve and Rick Hyatt, we have another meeting set up on Wednesday with Peter from Florida State, who's going to look at this from a different perspective of raising about $4 million for a new house down there. And so I'll be sending out, or Rick will be sending out, Rick Story will be sending out an invite for a Wednesday meeting with Peter of Florida State, Alpha Gamma Rho. So
those boys down there got lots of money. They got lots of money, and they build stuff big down there. And then I'm sure that of course, I'm sure, has Aaron brought up NC State yet?
Which one?
North Carolina State?
No, North Carolina State is not bubbled.
Ask him about it. Okay, North Carolina State is the case study of what you don't want to do. Okay, they borrowed got themselves in a really leveraged situation. And then all of a sudden the cash flow wasn't there because the undergraduates stopped recruiting basically. And all of a sudden they had no way of paying their mortgage and that. And I'm not sure if they foreclosed it or not, but it could have been. But they're the case study in what not to do.
Wow.
Okay. We're okay so far. But the cash flow is paramount if you're gonna pay bank notes. So
Sounds good. Can't thank you enough, Tim, for your time, your candidness, and your honest approach to this. We're in the early phases, but we are wanting to get it right from the outset. And hearing from people like you will help us maybe alleviate a mistake or two on the highway.
well, I hope that's the case. Get that 501(c) up and running, and then get an architect hired and get it drawn up, and he'll be able to estimate how much it's going to cost you. And that's, you got to have those go points. You got to know your budget, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
So anyway, you guys have my email if you need it. I'm here. I'm retired. I got nothing else to do than answer email.
Hey, Tim,
good.
did you have an alumni named Jerry Weller?
What's that last name?
Weller?
There's a Paul Weller.
Yeah, Paul. That was his name, Paul Weller.
Yeah, down at the USDA.
Yeah, I got to know him. I spent 18 years in Washington, D.C. and went to the Capital Area alumni meetings quite a bit.
He's the guy.
Paul was there. Yeah.
He's the guy. Now he'd be one of those guys in those top 10 contributors.
Yeah.
Okay. And but he was a guy, case in point, he sent us stock certificates. He never wrote a check. He just sent stock. So then of course what you have to do is decide if you're going to sit on the stock or sell it. We decided to sell it right away. Stupid us, because he sent us stuff that was still going up.
How about Henry Virts?
That name doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, he was past Secretary of Ag. He was a veterinarian there in Maryland, but he was Secretary of Ag Maryland back in the 90s.
That doesn't ring a bell, but that doesn't mean anything to me because again, I'm not an agricultural guy.
Yeah. We had a good Capital Area Alumni Association. We had, well, several national presidents there with Gene Swackhammer and Randy Torgerson and several others. I think at one time we had about 5 past national presidents that participated.
I've met both of those gentlemen.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, Swackhammer's from up real close to where my family's farm was, up in Baltimore County.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, he's from Indiana. My wife used to date his brother, so it goes back a long way.
Yep.
Anyway. Okay. I don't have any other questions. I think if you were to say, Tim, what was the toughest thing for you to accomplish?
The toughest thing to accomplish is getting over the resistance within the alumni board to write a check for something that they're not going to get anything out of. Okay. So you got to have those couple of guys who are going to lead their way with their checkbook. So you can talk about those guys over and over and over and over again. That makes sense?
It makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what you fellows do for a living, but you know these farmers. They don't want to write checks for nothing. But if you get some of these guys, some of these AGR chapters out in the Midwest, I mean, they got things like 3% of the wheat crop pledged to them. They got commodities pledged to them, and then that kind of thing. You got to be creative and how to bring your money in. I mean, some people had property donated, and then once you get that done, then you get to the point of maintenance where you start getting into the living trust type stuff and the life insurance policies and all that kind of stuff that you go out there and you talk people into buying, so that it doesn't cost them very much, but when they die, they're going to get $50,000 goes into the Alumni Association or something like that, which keeps things bubbling along. So yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks,
Okay,
Tim.
everybody. Thanks very much, guys. Have a good evening.
You bet.
Okay.
Thank you so
You
much.
too.
Hey,
Bye now.
bye now.